All right, welcome everyone. We could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome. Tonight is our final public hearing. 2019-2020 fiscal year general fund budget. But before we get to the budget, as a formality, as we've typically done, I want to say this is probably fourth year now. We're just going to do a brief, very brief, I promise, 4 slides, update on our efforts to stay up to date with the Securities and Exchange Commission for our continuing disclosures as a bond issuer. And with that, we'll just jump into that. Oops. Oh. Yeah, is it?
No, you're right.
Is it good?
Let me check the computer.
Oh, okay. Okay, no problem.
Took the new mouse out of the budget, right?
Almost. Yeah, I'm sure once.
I'll just advance it.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Thanks, Micah. You at least use the laser on it. Let me get my laser. I'm sorry.
Actually, I think it just worked.
Oh, did it? Oh, there we go. It's working now. Sorry about that. All right. Again, continuing disclosure, it's related to the district's outstanding bond issues. We have to make various disclosures by December 31st of each calendar year. Specifically for those bonds that are outstanding, just some information. We do have 2 outstanding bond issues. Series of 2012, principal amount $24,905,000. Last payment, scheduled payment, is October 15th, 2032. And also our series of 2016 bonds, principal amount outstanding $18,385,000. Final payment July 15th, 2027. For total outstanding bond principal $43,290,000. Total outstanding interest on those bonds issues currently $10,746,626. Thus, grand total of all district bond debt outstanding and payable is just over $54 million. And just a little bit of side information on that. The series of 2016 bonds cannot be refinanced any further. We need to basically pay out the rest of those bonds for the remaining 8.5 years. Our series 2012 bonds may potentially be able to be refunded in approximately 3 years or less. We have to wait and see. I mean, that's a lot of time between now and 3 years, see where the bond market's at and whether it's advantageous or not to be able to possibly do that. And if we're still able to do it in the same manner we did our series of 2016, which we converted non-taxable bonds to taxable bonds. So it would be essentially our last bite of the apple, so to speak, for those set of bonds. So again, time will tell. Some of the information we're required to disclose is our audited financial statements and various pieces of operating data. Various statistics are compiled and released. They mirror the same statistics that we put in our offering statements when we are going to market with, say, a new series of bonds. And we also do some voluntary disclosures each year. We also post our final budget document as well as our annual financial report. Again, just providing additional information to any of our bondholders so they're able to tell exactly what the status of the district's financial health is at any given point in time. Again, the district utilizes the services of Digital Assurance Certification, or DAC. Rating, I'm trying to think. The last time was, I'm trying to think it was Moody's or Standard & Poor's. I think I actually used Moody's. I think it was AA3, which was actually, it was actually a pretty darn good rating. I want to say there was maybe, if I recall correctly, 2, possibly 3 ratings above us for that, but considering how we fall in the spectrum, that's actually a very good rating on our end. If we had to go to market with that, we could go to market without having to take out insurance on that, which basically is utilized by entities to increase your rating. So again, which in that same situation saves us money when you're going to market for a new series of bonds. But again, we utilize services of DAC, Digital Assurance Certification. They do a great job. They help to monitor district for any bond rating changes and post the required disclosures to the SEC on behalf of the district. We also utilize them. They helped us to formulate our policy procedures related to various disclosures that we make, and they also provide me with the required CPE training opportunities as well, so I can keep up on some of the latest things that the district has to do. And again, in terms of our continuing disclosure activities, as I mentioned, we adopted policies, procedures, filing of any required reports and other operating data currently up to date and filed on time, and any notifications of material events in a timely manner to the SEC. Some examples would be debt service delinquencies, bankruptcy, and bond rating changes, which is the most prevalent item that we see that occurs from time to time. And that is it for that particular slide. With that, we will transition into our budget portion this evening. And again, this is our final public hearing for our 1920 fiscal year budget. Last time we met in this room, we were looking at a remaining deficit of $1.1 million. We've since honed that number down. Now, if you recall, at the May study session meeting, the proposed final budget was approved by the board at a remaining deficit of $800,000. So we even made some progress there. And then we're going to see where we stand here on a couple more slides where we stand this evening. Currently, total revenues as of right now, $76,760,000. Do not include a real estate tax increase, but we are showing the next slide here, actually 2 slides from now, just to show what the deficit is through the illustration. I didn't want to just take that out of there at this particular point in time. Increase of $1,448,000, or almost 2% over the fiscal year 18-19 budgeted total revenues. And there were a little bit of adjustments in that number as well from the last time we met. Some slight changes in assessed value being the predominant one. Gained a little bit of money there. Likewise, on the expenditure side, looking at $77,353,000. Increase of just over $2 million, or almost 3% over the current fiscal year 18-19 budget total expenditures. And as I alluded to earlier, on the next slide, you take our increase in revenues and our increase in expenditures, looking at a proposed final remaining shortfall or deficit of $593,000. And that is to be balanced through the utilization of unassigned fund balance. And we'll take a look at unassigned fund balance on some remaining slides. But again, we've got it down to this number. We still have a few things we're looking at to potentially drive that number down even further. And it's our hope that we'll have updated numbers as soon as next Tuesday when we have our study session meeting. The budget will be listed as an agenda item for consideration. It will not be an action item. It will be considered for a vote on the 18th, but again, it will be on for the 11th, and our expectation is to have a new deficit to present to the board as well as to the public and all of our stakeholders at that particular point in time.
If I could just add, Paul.
Central office has been hard at work over the last several weeks reducing the deficit. Done an excellent job of not hindering any programming. Bless you. At this point, we've preserved everything intact, and we are continuing to whittle away at the budget to see if we can get to the magic number of 0. But you never know, and that's why Mr. Shaw is here. We're
definitely trying. I mean, literally, new information comes in daily. So as it comes in, we do update. We will update as much as we can all the way up through the 18th and see exactly where we stand. And again, just to highlight, you know, if you've attended these meetings previously, you've heard this. It's not new information. But again, our two most significant issues that we encountered for 1920, again, increase in debt service from our series of 2016 general obligation bonds that we previously refinanced. That amounts to a net increase of over $1.1 million. And as we stated previously, a net decrease in real estate assessed values continues. And again, just had an unexpected magnitude of continued decline during 18-19 that negatively impacts our 19-20 revenues. And that amounts approximately almost $391,000. So again, just taking those two amounts together, you know, looking at just out of the gate, $1,500,000 and almost $51,000 net total that we've been trying to overcome in terms of the budget, in terms of what increases in revenues, what potential decreases in expenditures can we make to try to offset that requirement. And again, loss of revenue and required debt service payments, that we have to make them. There's no way of eliminating those or reducing those. And again, just some slides we typically include. Even again, we're not raising the real estate tax millage rate, but just some information that just discusses the percentages, what those mean in terms of mills and dollar amounts. And probably the most interesting item on this slide, and I'll say in light of some recent news, to see exactly where we do with our 15th lowest ranking. We are all well aware of many of our neighbors are considering tax increases, so we'll just have to see how those pan out and exactly where we end up with that. So once we have that, we probably won't have that information until probably July, somewhere around then, once it's compiled by the Allegheny Intermediate Unit, and we'll share that information with the board as soon as we have it, and also incorporate that into future presentations as well. And again, just another slide related to millage rates and maximum amounts. And again, just some historical information for our last 16 years in terms of what we've done in terms of tax increases, number of mills, whether we utilize fund balance, and what some of those amounts were utilized. So again, just another nice historical slide with some information there. And again, just more information related to millage and percentage index information. Homestead exclusion. Since we last met, we did receive the CD from Allegheny County, and as well as receive some other information from Pennsylvania Department of Education that there will be, and this will be, the 12th year in a row for the district to receive and distribute state gaming revenue distribution. And again, distribution is revenue neutral. There's no windfall at all for the district. District receives the money and passes the money on to the eligible homestead properties in the municipality of Monroeville and the borough of Pitcairn. And so our eligible homesteads actually decreased for 1920 down to 8,069, and they're comprised of 7,547 in the municipality of Monroeville and 522 in the borough of Pitcairn. The exclusion dollar amounts that everyone who has a homestead exclusion will see amounts to $181.04. That will be shown as a homestead reduction on the real estate tax bills. And again, fund balance. Again, some of the major items that we always typically highlight on as we go through the budgetary process. These are some of the big items we've seen previously. Again, looking at a projected net decrease for the current fiscal year. And again, we won't know to the dollar until late August, early September, exactly where we finished the 18-19 fiscal year, until we get all receipts accounted for, get all liabilities, all accounts payable accounted for, like we typically do. Then we'll know exactly where we finished out the year. But again, just going roughly off some of our major numbers in terms of that we know are out there. We're looking at a projected ending fund balance of about $8.4 million for 18-19.
Why is the propane fuel credit 2018 unavailable?
It is unavailable because the U.S. Congress did not extend out the program for the 2018 calendar year. Typically what they've been doing with it is that they typically, and unfortunately this normally happens in January, they would extend the program retroactively for the previous calendar year, enabling all entities like the district were considered an alternative fueler for propane, liquid propane gas. We would be able to file a tax return with them and to be able to get that propane credit. Unfortunately, with everything going on in DC, that has not happened. I actually checked with my contact at Farrell Gas in Kansas, and he doesn't seem to think that it's going to be retroactively approved for 18. We're hoping maybe 19, the current fiscal year, but again, we probably won't find out till early 2020 whether that's going to come through or not. But essentially what that enables us to do is, based on our number of gallons of liquid propane gas utilized, is to get a certain dollar credit back for that of approximately 50 cents per gallon. So it's one of those things we'd always looked at it. We always kind of knew, we weren't sure whether it was going to be extended every year. It's kind of a bonus on top of the low rates we're paying on liquid propane gas. So if we get it, great. If not, I mean, unfortunately it happens for that. But this would be the first time, and I'm not sure what the inception day of the program was, but this is the first time that Congress has not acted to retroactively allow entities like the district to be able to go back and file for that. So I'm sure if all entities are considered across the United States, it's probably a great loss of income for many entities. So just unfortunate, but we'll still monitor it and keep an eye on it as well moving forward. So again, just showing that ending number, our various categories of fund balance everyone's seen before, in terms of what that would mean based off of the projected budget, about 11% fund balance, which again, very, very healthy, between the recommended 5-15%. And looking at what we're projected to utilize for next year, taking that estimated amount, deducting out our $1,504,000 in capital reserve fund projects and transfers, looking at, and we should be able to adjust this number probably this week for our copier purchase. Again, doing it in this manner to give us some budgetary reductions for future fiscal years. And also, as previously mentioned this evening, our utilization of fund balance to eliminate the remaining deficit. So utilizing approximately $2.4 million out of fund balance would take our projected fund balance down through this projection of just shy of $6 million, which is approximately 7.72%. Again, still in the mid-range of between 5 and 15%. Yes, George?
Thank you. When I got on board about 4 years ago, our fund balance was like 13, 14 million.
Mm-hmm.
It's starting to worry me that we're going down to about 6 million. Is it a question about raising taxes?
I'll tell you what. I'll give you a mic. I'll let you go right in the record, George.
Yeah, when I got on board about 4 years ago, our fund balance was around 13 million, 14 million at the time. Now we're talking it's going to go down to about $6 million this year when we're touching our fund balance of 593,000. We were talking about taxes earlier, and is it out of the question now about raising taxes?
Well, we didn't feel it necessary to go down that road based on our various cuts and adjustments we were able to make for the 1920 fiscal year for that. I want to say the initial number you referred to was approximately 14.9 million at the time for that. And in terms of school district fund balances, I'd say it's definitely on the high side for that. So we were actually able to utilize fund balance for various capital projects. And we've done that. This will actually mark this $1.5 million that you can see right here is actually the third year in a row we've taken out several $1 million to self-fund some of our projects.
That's almost a little over $6 million in capital projects that were including this year.
Yeah,
Plus.
That's it's somewhere around there. Yeah, I want to say we did about. I think we had. Well, it's on my other slide. Hang on a second. Actually, you can see the numbers right here. Actually, about 3.8 million utilized there for capital projects. 1.8 million, and again another 1.5 million for that. But yeah, there was many required projects. Roofs. We did a lot of roofs. AC. Some of the things we were able to take advantage of to enable us, well, one, to grow that fund balance. And again, it's nothing that was planned in terms of incorporating anything into the budget. I think sometimes there's that misconception out there that we purposely do that, which we don't. You basically have the best of both worlds coming together. And when I say the best of both worlds, you have a situation that you have expenditures that come in less than budgeted for. Likewise, you have revenues that come in greater than budgeted for. So as if you've heard me refer to the dust settles on the fiscal year for that, when we reconcile all those items at the end of the day, and that situation occurs, and it has occurred for that, that's where we build our fund balance up for that. Sure, yeah. We did projects, and that's a good example. Retrofitting LED lights is a project that essentially we've taken the money invested in our buildings, and we continue to see expenditure reductions on a monthly basis. So again, an investment into our facilities for that. But yeah, we've done a great bit with those items as well moving forward for that. But again, we've had some of those fiscal years where those items have come together, and we're able to increase it, the fund balance increased, and it made sense. It just happened at a great time where we knew we had to make capital improvements. So, why take out any debt? Why issue bonds when you don't need to? You can self-fund those programs, those things. Now, looking down the road, as we've all are well aware, we're looking at some bigger renovation projects, which we will not be able to fund through our fund balance for a number of reasons. Obviously, it depleting, along the lines of what George had mentioned. We've been doing smaller projects that make sense. When we start talking larger projects of larger scale, that's when we start looking at additional debt and new bonds and what things we can do to potentially structure those things. So those will be conversations we'll all be having in the future as we analyze in terms of what we want to do and the best way to go about doing that for that. But again, it's great that we've had the fund balance. That, even with some of those ranges, it made sense to utilize it in the manner we have. And again, as you've heard me say, strategically utilize that. In a manner that is either one time or on a very infrequent basis. When you're talking roofs and, we did the high school stadium wall, those are projects that, we may never even touch that wall again for 60 years. It's very possible. So again, you're taking out for those things, and, it's not.
That wall itself is 400,000.
Yeah, approximately 400,000. So again, you pull from fund balance ideally for those types of projects that are non-reoccurring. You never take out a fund balance or on a larger magnitude for expenditures that are reoccurring every year, because then the snowball builds and you rapidly deplete that down for that. Now also in terms of, I just want to highlight, I think I have to back up here. I want to point out a couple of numbers on here. Traditionally, and you look at the amount of fund balance budgeted for it over these various years. Capital projects, that was actually a CSE portion for renovation. But when you also look at these smaller amounts, 574,000, 245, 370, 342, 390, and then these other smaller amounts there. Some of those years, I know the ones in particular I can say for sure offhand, this one and these, and I believe these, when we did commit fund balance in the budgetary process, it was more of a placeholder for that. And it being a number that we were comfortable with. So for instance, the 593,000 you're seeing this evening, that's a number we were able to reduce the deficit down in terms of what I call a comfortable number that we can say we can take that out of fund balance, knowing that we're not going to spend every dollar to the exact dollar in expenditures. We're not going to receive every revenue to the exact dollar as well. So our hope is that we'll be able to absorb that in next year's budget at the end of the day, that it's a smaller amount. So between the amount and some of the other items we're looking at making adjustments to that, that's our expectation for that. Now, the pendulum doesn't always swing that way. We've been fortunate that over more times than not, we've been able to absorb it in that manner for that. Can I say 100% for sure next year we're going to be able to absorb that? No, I can't. But again, in theory, if that number comes out, it still would not deplete our fund balance to the point where it's at zero or some unmanageable number out there that we wouldn't feel comfortable with having that to kind of fall back on in terms of, can we make either some type of emergency repair? Is there some large refund, for instance, we have to make that we're required to make, whatever the case may be. $6 million or approximately $6 million is still a very comfortable number. And I can say that some of our neighbors would love to have that number remaining after next fiscal year.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
That number that strikes me is new copiers for $300,000.
Yep.
How many are you going to buy?
I don't know if you want to weigh in on that, Mike?
Yeah. Curious, that seems like a big number.
It does seem like a big number. There is I want to say about 40 copiers in total. It's a mixture of large copiers, smaller copiers, as well as printers. It also includes software that will be able to control the amount of copying. So as opposed to everyone just copying as much as they want, we'll be able to control that. So it is a large number of devices, it's just a mixture.
This will explain. So right now we have a lease, and then at the end we have a lease buyout. Look at it as a lease to buy, and once the cash flow, buy up front, we have an initial outlay of cash. We're not going to have any lease payments for the next several years. So you're going to see an expenditure this year, but you're not going to see the same lease payments that we had in the last contract for the next year, and next year, and next year.
Well, I'm very technologically challenged, but I know that technology, you can scan stuff into a computer and print it on your printer, and I divided 300,000 by $500 for a copier, and that's 600 copiers, and that seems like a crazy number. But for 40, it's even a bigger number. If you divide 300,000 by 40 copiers, that's quite an expenditure for copiers. And I understand your point that you're not leasing them and renting them. You're buying them, which is probably a better thing to do because they're going to have a longer life. But it just seems like a big number.
They are very expensive. And also in light of the various tariff situations out there, they could get even more expensive moving forward. So one of the things we looked at with that is, again, in terms of budgetary relief moving forward. And again, in the same strategic realm of utilizing fund balance to make a purchase that may not replicate itself for maybe 5, 6, maybe 7 years. That helps out. So again, it's utilizing some fund balance in that manner, also getting some budgetary relief in terms of less expenditures moving forward in out fiscal years. So for instance, by buying these copiers, we're not making lease payments. Now we will have maintenance contract for those copiers. The other great thing is with owning them, as opposed to leasing them where either they turn over or you end up with new copies, you're paying full lease payments moving forward, is that we may even be able to keep them an extra 2, maybe 3 years, depending on how they're holding up. So again, you're talking just keeping rental contracts on those for repairs and maintenance for that. So, but it gives us more options when we own them to do what we want with them. I mean, even, correct me if I'm wrong, jump in if I'm wrong, but even our current lease copiers of Konica Minolta, we're actually going to own some of those. We may end up keeping some of those potentially or utilizing them in maybe some transitional manner potentially. But again, it gives us options with that as well. But again, in the same realm as what we tried to look at everything in this budget, what can we do to reduce expenditures not only next year but also even multiple years as well for that.
So in that 300,000 maintenance contracts are included?
No. The 300,000, and actually we still have to adjust this amount based on what Mr. Brown is looking at with our the vendor we've selected that we're going to present to the board for approval. We actually have in his budget that actually lists the purchase, but also there's separate line items that cover the maintenance. So again, we're looking at utilizing some fund balance for the purchase, but in terms of budgeting the actual maintenance and repairs on that, we've incorporated that in the next year's budget, as well as subsequent year budgets, which is typical for that. But again, where it'll really shine is in 2021. When you look at Mr. Brown's budget, it'll actually drop because the purchase will not be in there. It'll just be the maintenance side of things for that. But even as far as the various equipment Mr. Brown has spec'd out and reviewed for us, and some of his ability to monitor and control printing and copying, etc., we're going to see some savings in the realm for that. So again, we're always trying to look at ways where we can save money and work more efficiently as well with all of our equipment.
I agree. The maintenance component of that is very critical because as we've seen over the years, and I think Micah, you'll attest to this, if a copier does break down, printer does break down, that kind of stops an operation. We understand that teachers do plan in advance, but sometimes there's items that are coming from the classroom that go to a printer that they're anticipating maybe that day, and it's important that we have service available immediately to fix and repair.
And again, that was one of the major items that Mr. Brown had taken a look at when we had all of our discussions in terms of, how are we going to acquire these items. At the end of the day, making the best selection in terms of the best technology fit for the district, where we have confidence in the machines that we're getting, and we've gone through this process many times over the years, and we've seen equipment not hold up, or some equipment that's done better than expected. But again, we've made the best selection in terms of the vendor we're going to bring forward at next Tuesday's study session meeting for that. So, all right. Just in terms of the budget process, again, we're following the pre-Act 1 timeline. And in terms of where we stand with that, actually, let me just back up. Currently on the website, the proposed final budget that was approved by the board on May 14th is currently out there via the required PD 2028 budget form, as well as the corresponding detailed Excel spreadsheets. Those are also displayed on the district's website. And again, our process will move forward. Next Tuesday, June 11th, we'll be presenting a new updated budget number, different from what you're seeing this evening, for discussion and consideration. And as indicated on this slide at the bottom, on Tuesday, June 18th, 2019, at the June regular board meeting, the budget as well as the millage will be considered for final adoption by the board. And that concludes our presentation. Do we have any other questions, comments?
Thanks, Paul.
Yep. Welcome.
Mr. Starkunis was acknowledging the work of Mr. Schott. Nice job, Paul. I think for our viewing audience, what is important here is in the recent headlines that have been making the news with local districts surrounding Monroeville, we have always maintained that it is imperative that we continue to place the academic status of this district first and foremost. And our record speaks for itself. I've maintained over the years, and Mr. Starkunis is here, that I've said this many times, that we have the best teachers, no doubt, in Pennsylvania. And they've continued to do an excellent job. The programming that we offer is second to none. We have not, and I repeat, have not attacked programming during this budget or over the last 3 or 4 budgets that I've been superintendent. And it's important that the viewing audience hears this, because the educational status of Gateway, Monroeville, and Pitcairn is critical to what we do and how we operate and continue to operate. But understanding the taxpayers' dollars are very, very important, and that's who we represent. And we've been able to do so very progressively and fiscally managing every dollar. So Thank you, Paul, and we'll continue to work at it.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from anyone? All right, that concludes our presentation. Thank you, everyone.